Hello, welcome to my channel, Edible Thoughts Makes. My name is Stephanie, and this channel is where I share with you my works in progress, finished projects, things I'm cooking up, books I'm reading, funny things my kids may say. My hope is that as you watch this episode and the previous episode, that you find some inspiration along the way. This is episode 127, and I am coming to you from a hot and humid, overcast day in Minnesota where I live with my husband and our 2 young children. Today I have quite a bit to share with you because it has been about a month since we last had a full-on chit-chat. We have finished out the school year, which I believe last time we were almost done, so it was the end of the school year chaos, and now we have a whole different energy, which is summer chaos. And we have hit the ground running, and so it has just been go, go, go. I will say it's all good things, so it isn't that we're so busy that we don't get to enjoy it, but there is a little bit more loaded up front right now, and we are having a good time though. I have several works in progress as well as the finished projects, which include knitting and sewing. If you are new here, the way I usually organize my videos is I have an intro section, kind of get you updated on what's going on and what the weather is like. And if there are garden updates, I go through that. And then we go into finished projects, works in progress, and eats and reads section where I go over maybe things I've cooked and baked, books that I'm reading, and then sometimes there is a food for thought section where I share with you something that's been on my mind, in my heart. It is oftentimes related to making in some way or another, but it's just general life stuff. And for the sake of time today, I am not sure I'm going to get to those things. It's not that I'm not cooking or baking or reading. I'm doing all of those things, but yeah, just for sake of time. And I have a lot of projects to share with you, so I think I'm going to focus on that. If I do get a chance to hop on here in a couple of weeks, I will add those things back in, but we'll just see what happens. We're going with the flow and just seeing what happens. I do include closed captionings on all of my videos, so you click on that CC button. The links to things I talk about will be in the description box below this video. Sometimes you have to click on show more or a certain arrow. If I speak faster or slower than your preferences, YouTube allows you to adjust the speed. I do use Ravelry for my projects. It does only include the crochet and knitting items. It is not set up for sewing items. I have had people ask before, but where is this project that you sewed? Well, Ravelry isn't set up for that, so it isn't on there. I do not have like an online thing for my sewing, and so that's whatever I show here will be here. And sometimes I will do separate videos specifically for a sewing project maybe I've made multiple times to show you all the different versions. So I've had some of those uploaded here, but yeah, so that's where that stuff is. Sometimes I will have notes here on the screen in case I say something that's incorrect, or if I don't catch it while editing, maybe it'll be in the description box below this video. I am a human being, so mistakes happen, and sometimes I catch them and sometimes I don't. So though I do use Ravelry, I do try to share all of the information that I put in my project notes there also here on YouTube, just to keep that information accessible and just to have another way of intaking that information, sharing that information, seeing the projects. You know, it's hard to share drape in a picture sometimes. I mean, it's doable, but I'm just saying it's a little different than something in action, and just to see the colors and maybe a different lighting and seeing it on a body. I don't always wear all of my finished projects on one episode just because it's a lot to take off, I don't know, different things like that, but I do end up wearing them throughout in some episodes, so usually you will see it at some point, or I will take photos of me wearing them and share those on my Instagram, so that's another place to look. Photos will be there. They will also be on Ravelry, and I do talk about them here on YouTube, and so I try to keep it manageable for myself, but also accessible for you. Okay, so since we last chatted, things have been planted in the garden. We usually plant around Mother's Day weekend, which is the middle of May. Usually that is when we are out of the frost risk. And so this year we probably could have planted earlier, but I feel like every time we think, oh, we can plant earlier, something happens and everything dies. So we did not do that. We waited until middle of May. So radishes are able to be harvested and eaten. And what's great about the radishes is they come up so fast, 4 to 5 weeks, and they are ready to eat. And then you can just use that area of the garden to plant something else or keep planting more radishes. So that's really fun. And we have sugar snap peas that are growing, and we usually try to get them to grow upwards, but I think we used a different rope or something this year and it was too slippery and it didn't like to adhere, so they're all kind of slanting. So we're going to try a different twine and do it that way. I don't know why we didn't just do what we did before in the past. That worked, but anyway. The tomatoes are growing, they're still green, nothing to pick yet. As far as the flowers go, peonies and irises are done, and right now it is the time for lilies and hydrangeas. I do have a little bouquet here of some of the hydrangeas. I believe these are the Annabelles, the big white ones that start out lime green. And then I have some of these yellowish lilies up here in the middle. These are just absolutely beautiful, and I love them. We have maybe 3 or 4 varieties of hydrangeas. So this is the earliest blooming one. And then we have a hot pink one. I want to say it's called Summer Crush. And then we have another one that's a little more cone shaped. I can't remember what it's called right now, but it changes color and creates like an ombre pink effect, which is just beautiful. So yeah, maybe 3. I thought there was a 4th one. I don't remember. Maybe that one blooms later, so I'm not thinking of it yet, but these bloom first and the other ones come throughout the summer. I think that is everything I wanted to update you on. So let's get into the projects. I am finishing my coffee from earlier this morning. It was hot, and then it was lukewarm, and now it is iced. Can anyone relate? Okay, finished projects. First one I'm going to share with you is what I am wearing. This is a hacked sewing pattern. It is hacked from the Augustina boxy top from the Fabrics store. And that one, I really modified it quite a bit. I used it as a baseline. It is a free pattern, and there are lots of different types of boxy tops out there. The general construction of it is pretty much the same. General shape of it is pretty much the same. The necklines may be slightly closer, not as close, more width in the boxiness, more length in the sleeves. It really just varies a little bit, but the idea of it is all the same. So I used the top as a hack, if you will, for this dress. And I made several of them to try to get to something that was what I was looking for. And the initial one is very close of a crew line, and honestly, I couldn't get it over my head without taking off my glasses. And yes, I should be taking off my glasses to put on my clothes, but I just don't always. And then you get stuck. If you wear glasses and you've experienced this getting stuck thing, let me know that I am not alone on that. So yes, I don't always take off my glasses and they get stuck. And so I also wanted a lower neckline because it just isn't very comfortable when it's very hot to have a very close neckline for me. So that one came up pretty high, so I adjusted that. I made it, I think, an inch or maybe even more lower. I did not cut it wider. I just rounded it deeper when I was cutting it out, just for the front, not for the back. Another thing I changed was that it was very wide, even for the size that I picked for my bust circumference. And so that was the smallest size. It still had a ton of ease, which was great if I wanted it just as a top. But for a dress, I tried it and it was just way too wide. And so by taking it in, I did not take it in from the back width because I still wanted my shoulders to be where they were. That fit well. I wanted it just to be taken in for the waist area. So I drew from the armpit area in. So in the original pattern, you start going down a lot closer to this edge of this armhole. And I just took that in and went down from there. I made the mistake on one trial where I went too far in this way towards my body because then I didn't have the armhole depth that I needed to make it comfortable for moving my arms. Instead, I wanted a more gentle slope down, not a right angle, a gentle slope down and just kind of cut in more. And that way I could take inches off the waist. I took maybe 4 to 5 inches off the waist. I can't remember exactly. I made so many different versions trying out different things. And then I did cut off quite a bit from the top bodice section. This hits right above my belly button probably, or about my belly button, and the original probably would have been a bit longer. And then there's also room to do a hem on the body, and so there was that too. And so I cut off, I want to say 5 inches or so, and then the bottom part I did a gathered skirt, and there are inseam pockets. I used the same fabric on this one so that you wouldn't be able to see through it. And I thought I did a pretty good job lining up this gingham pattern. This is the side seam in the skirt. It was a little bit tricky because this washed linen does stretch around a little bit, or not stretch, but it does distort a little. And having the boxes did make it easier to try to sew straight, but it also made it more obvious if it wasn't straight. I think for the gathering, the width ended up being about 2 or 2.5 times the bodice circumference maybe. Again, I don't remember exactly. I had purchased, I'm going to stand back a little. I had purchased 2 yards of this wide fabric and used up as much of it as I could. And so hopefully you can get a slightly better view with me standing farther back. And then this drop shoulder sleeve construction is fun to do with this double cuff. And being a lighter weight fabric, it doesn't end up being as bunchy with all of the seams here between the front and back join and the sleeve cuff. But if you use a thicker fabric, it could get a little thick in that area. And I did also top stitch to get that inside part to lay flat. Maybe I can show it to you. I might be too close to have that be visible. But yeah, I thought it turned out really nicely. This side seam here in the bodice, I think I did pretty good on lining it up. One side is a little closer than the other. I think this side I was a little bit closer. Oh no, this side's not too bad either. I feel like this side's also really close. Maybe right on. Excellent. So I found this fabric to be interesting. I've never used this washed linen before. When you wash it, it has a texture and it's bumpy and kind of crinkly. And I wasn't sure if I was supposed to iron out all the crinkles or as much as I could before sewing or before cutting, or if I was supposed to leave the crinkles and then sew. I thought that was a little tricky. I should have asked the owner of the shop that I bought this from before I did that. But yeah, I did find that a little tricky. So I would not consider this like a beginner fabric to use. I mean, go ahead, you do whatever you want. But it was also on the pricier end. I think it was $20 or $22 US dollars per yard, something like that. So I considered that a little more expensive. And so I definitely practiced on other fabrics first that were not as pricey so that if I messed up, it wasn't a big deal. But I really wanted to make sure that I knew what I was doing before I cut into this fabric. So I did not anticipate that whole crinkle factor. I think it worked out just fine. I did try to iron it out pretty flat. And then after washing, I iron it because it crinkles up and it just likes to do that. But the texture is real nice. And I think it actually helps it be more breathable because you have less fabric sitting on you by it being crinkly, so nothing sticks to you when it's hot and humid. So it's actually the perfect fabric to wear when it's super, super hot. So it is 100% linen. It's called washed linen, and I really like this fabric. It has more of a teal-y undertone to it, so like an ocean blue, and I really like that. I'm a big fan of like teal-y blues, and yeah, I think it turned out real nice. So modified the top, changed the neckline, changed the width, changed the length, added a skirt. And really, if you find any sort of top pattern, you can modify it into a dress if you want to. And there are lots of different tutorials online. Just check that if you are interested in learning more. But yeah, lots of resources out there. And if you have a local sewing shop near you, you can also ask them. They tend to be very knowledgeable and oftentimes also have classes on how to sew garments and sew various different things. So I recommend checking that out if that is a resource available to you. The other sewing pattern that I played around with recently is one by Sew Liberated. It is a newly released pattern. This is the Petrichor Pinafore, and it comes in a couple of views. You can do it longer or shorter, and the recommended fabric is something lighter weight to medium weight, otherwise the pleats end up being bulky. I'm gonna see if I can hold up the pleats closer so that you can see them. I used a Kaufman Essex linen cotton yarn dyed blend something. It is a really long name, something like that, but it has cotton and linen in it, which means it doesn't wrinkle as easily because it's not all linen, and it has a little weight to it because of the cotton, and it has this beautiful heathered look about it. And yeah, I really enjoyed sewing this. It was a different construction than I have made before. I don't think I've ever made something with this kind of piecing together, and I think I did a good job. It is definitely wearable, and I'm not sure if I've done this kind of pocket before. I can't remember what it's called, but I think I did a good job with it. It looks very tidy. Everything is very smooth. I think the inside finishing is very tidy as well, and I again used the serger for overlocking any raw seams, raw edges. Not raw seams, raw edges. And yeah, this was a fun one. I did run into a little bit of issue at some point where my seam allowance and my pieces weren't matching up, and so I was really close to eking it in there, so I'm not sure what happened, but something happened, and so I definitely had to use the seam ripper a couple of times to get it to line up just right. And yeah, I'm very proud of it. I think it turned out real nice. I'm not sure if I would make it again, only because I don't really see a need for me to have more than one of these unless I did a longer one. This is the shorter view, so it comes, it ends right above my knees, and so it's perfect for summer. But I can also wear this into fall and winter depending on what I wear underneath. So I could do a turtleneck, I could do a sweater, I could do leggings, I could do wool tights and boots. And so with that, I feel like the material itself and the color is something I can actually wear year round. And if I were to make another one, I would probably make a longer one in a lighter weight fabric, and that one would definitely be more of a spring or summer. But other than that, I feel like this is good. I really enjoyed the exercise, the challenge for it, but it is definitely not something I think I would make like 10 of, which is something that I'm known to do. I really like simple patterns that are very functional. And so if I get the idea of making it different colors, trying out different fabrics or even yarns, depending on what the project is, I will make several of them. But for something that's a little more distinct like this, I feel like one is good. But if I wanted to make a second one, I would do a lighter weight fabric in the longer version, and that could be like a nice beach or swimsuit throw on type of thing. And yeah, so really happy with how this turned out. We are moving on to finished knit items, and I believe I have 4 here. Nope, 5, but one you've seen before when it was almost finished. So the other ones are more newly finished, and one of them I don't even believe you saw last time because I finished it so quickly. But the first one I want to share with you is the Building Blocks Cardi, and this is a pattern by Amy Scher. And I started this, I want to say November of last year, finished it in April of this year, and it isn't because it takes a long time. I just was distracted and doing some other things. Plus I got stuck at one point and my brain just wasn't comprehending what was happening. So I was also waiting on buttons that are made by my husband. And so until I had the buttons on, it wasn't super wearable because I still had light bulb stitch markers marking where I wanted to sew the buttons so they lined up with the button holes. And so I couldn't actually wear it even though I finished it end of April. But it is wearable now. And these buttons are just beautiful. I can't remember if they are birch or buckthorn, but they are made from a stick or branch in our yard. So my husband cut them up, sanded them, stained them, drilled holes into them. I just said that the holes had to be big enough for my yarn needle and the yarn, and so we took out all the drill bits and measured them to figure out, or measured them against what I needed them for so we knew which diameter to pick. And yeah, they turned out really beautiful. I love that you can see the circles of the green. I'm not sure if I can hold it super close without it being out of focus, so hopefully you can get an idea of what it looks like. I'm going to put it on just real quick over this dress. I'm not going to be able to wear it for very long because it is way too hot to be wearing a wool sweater. I have talked about this sweater in a previous episode, and oh, that would be a good time to mention on my Ravelry project pages, I will also put on there which episode I talk about the project as a work in progress and as a finished project. And that way you can refer to that when you are looking for a specific project. But this one was talked about previously, it just didn't have the buttons on them yet. So I made this one to be, well, it's just past my hip, so it's not necessarily high hip length, but it isn't, well, maybe it's getting close to full length. But I really like how a V-neck cardigan sits. I just feel like you don't end up with like a flappy neckline that a circular one has if you decide not to button it up all the way. And I might not like something all the way up on my neck. So this just sits nice and flat. I feel like it really frames whatever I'm wearing underneath nicely if I have something that is higher. And I'm just so pleased with this. It fits really well. I'm going to stand back a little so maybe you can get a better view of it. But yes, it's so comfortable. I really like it. I think this is a good length that I can wear with lots of different things, and this color is something that I really like. It just makes me happy, and this rainbow tweed is so much fun. My sleeves are super long, so if I want to fold them up, I can do that and just have it double cuffed. And they're still plenty long. But yes, this is finally actually finished and I just love it. Next, 3 finished projects are also tops, and we'll just start with this one. This is the Queen's Cami by Tori Yu, and it is my second version of this pattern. I knit this in Pearl Soho's linen quill, which is 50% fine Highland wool, 35% alpaca, 15% linen. Is a fingering weight yarn. It is super soft and drapey. And of course, if you're allergic to alpaca, it will not feel super soft. It will be super itchy. I don't feel like I can wear wool in the very heat of summer. Like when it's 85 degrees, I do not want to wear wool. When it's 70, I can tolerate it just fine. But yeah, past 75, no thank you. So for some people, they can do it. For me, not so much. But I do love this as a layering piece as well underneath a denim shirt, or maybe in the fall underneath a flannel shirt. And yeah, I just love how the colors turned out. The bright coral color is bright flamingo. Then the neon pink is pink pop. And then this pinky purple color is magnolia, bloom, or blossom. I cannot remember, but I just love it. Let me pull up my numbers for you. I knit the first size, and the first one I did, I morphed 2 sizes together because I wasn't sure if it would sit okay over my hips because I was also making it longer. Turns out it's just fine. I made the first size this time and just knit the first size the whole way through, and it was fine. I did more aggressively block the bottom part so that it wouldn't be tight over my hips, and I haven't had a problem. I'll wear it on a future episode and maybe you'll be able to assess for yourself, but it seems to be drapey and flowy and just fine. And so that turned out well, and I did follow the instructions for how you do the different needle sizes, which I think is a beautiful way to adjust the width of the garment. So on the bottom, you use a bigger needle, so your gauge is very loose and flowy, and then you get a little bit smaller, which cinches it in a little, and then you change it again, which then creates a fabric density on top that is not see-through, and it also just makes it a little bit smaller than the bottom part. In total, I used about 106 grams of the yarn, and I love how it turned out. I think it's so lovely. I think I made the bottom a couple of inches longer than the pattern states, so it just goes over my hips, and I think it's really cute with like black shorts, with olive green shorts. It can be good with jeans. It's a piece that just fits really comfortably. It does cover my bra strap, so I have no issues with that. The back, I feel like, doesn't go in super far like a racer back would, so nothing pops out. And the front isn't too low. I feel like the front neckline is really comfortable and sits at a nice spot where it isn't too high either. And so yeah, I'm very, very pleased with how this turned out. I did add eyelets, I forgot that. So the pattern is all in one color, and of course I have 3 colors here, and I did add a row of eyelets. I feel like eyelets are a very summery look, and I just did it along the bottom, and it's yarn over, knit 2 together, and then you just knit the round after that. And yeah, I like how it looks, and I think I might make another one in shades of blue. I think that could be really pretty, like light blue, aqua, darker blue. Yeah, I think that could be really pretty too. I might do something similar along the bottom. I don't know yet. We'll see. Next up is the Weekday Tee. This is a pattern by Amy Scher, and here it is. It is a top-down tee, and it is a raglan shaped yoke construction with this beautiful lace detail. And so it's a pretty, I would say, not, well, basic. I don't think basic is a bad word. I think it's just fine. So it's a pretty standard basic tee, but that extra little bit of detail makes it interesting to make and also fun to wear. I do like that you start flat instead of joining in the round. I feel like you can get a better scoop with that and not so close of a crew neck. But I will say, if you are using a yarn that isn't all wool, sometimes places that have uneven tension seem more exaggerated than they would if you were using an all wool yarn. And that's something I did notice. It isn't super obvious, especially when wearing, but I feel like I see it. This yarn is Pearl Soho Sweetgrass in the colorway Sesame, and it is 65% organic cotton, 35% super fine alpaca. I'm going to hold up this front section and maybe you'll be able to notice, maybe you don't. Either way, I think it's just fine, but I did notice that even with wet blocking, it is slightly noticeable, but maybe it's not. I don't know. So it's just mostly that it isn't even just the pearl rows that are different. I feel like in general, I mean, we're not machines, and so sometimes our tension is slightly tighter, slightly looser, and I feel like with a yarn that isn't all wool, that has some elasticity and is a little more forgiving, the cotton just makes it a little more obvious. That's all. And I did enjoy making this. It was really fun to do, and I, like I've mentioned before, am not much of a lace knitter, but when I only have to do it on these increases and I only have to do it for this top section, it's just fine. And so I like having that look. You do pick up for the neckline ribbing after, which I think is also really nice because then you can adjust it to your preferences. If you want it more wide or more cinched in, you can adjust as you see fit, versus if you started with the neckband and then just went afterwards, if you decide you want it different, it isn't as easy to fix. I did make my sleeves a little bit longer in the pattern. It is essentially like it's not really cap sleeve, but it's a much shorter sleeve. And so I added several inches to mine. And so mine comes down a little bit above the elbow, which is where I like it. And my body length is shorter than the pattern, so mine hits more at high hip. I can still tuck it into the front of shorts if I want to, but it is something that I can also comfortably wear with jeans. And so yeah, I'm very pleased with this. I did achieve gauge using a US 3 or 3.25 millimeter needle for the main. Neckline ribbing, I used a US 1.5 needle, which I believe is what's in the pattern. Sleeves, I used a US 4. I went up a little bit because I was knitting it on a small circumference and I definitely didn't want it too tight. And the gauge I feel like is the same. I cannot tell a difference between the upper yoke section and my sleeve, so that was a good choice. And then for the cuffs ribbing, I did a US 2. And in total, I used 665 yards of yarn, which is the equivalent to about 150 grams. So again, I don't know if I said it earlier. I picked the size B, which gives me 3 inches of positive ease, and the recommendation in the pattern is 0 to 3 inches. So this fits me really well. I really like how it turned out. I really like this color. I feel like it's a good staple and it will go basically with anything. So if traveling and needing to pack, I feel like this is an easy one because you can just reuse it in various different combinations. And so yeah, I'm very, very pleased with how this turned out. Next garment is one that has not been shown here yet because I made it in less than a week. I was making it super quickly because I didn't know if I needed to order more yarn. So this is the Tolsta Tank vest version, and this is a pattern by the Creabea, Rebecca of the Creabea, and it's a pattern that just released. It has so many different views. The cast on is all the same. It's knit bottom up, and then when you get to the top portion, you choose if you want this kind of vest look or a V-neck, which I believe is called the camisole, and then there's a square neck version as well. And you have the option of knitting it at a 17 stitch gauge or a 24 stitch gauge, so a looser DK weight or a fingering weight version. This one I picked size 1, but I knit it at a different gauge. Again, I was playing pretty extreme yarn chicken, and so I needed to go up my needle size so that I could cover more ground with the yardage that I have. Sorry, there is an end sticking out and I am trying to fix it. Okay, the yarn I used is Purl Soho's Morning Base, which is 191 yards for 100 grams, 75/25 organic cotton, and yak. I was using yarns left over from 2 previous garments, and since it is a special fiber blend, I didn't really want to order more yarn because then I would have more leftovers that I couldn't easily mix and match with something else. The colorways I have here are Cucumber Ice, which is this light minty green, and Heirloom White is the cream subtle stripes along the bottom. And I knew the yardage I had was not the yardage that was estimated in the pattern, and so I just had to wing it and see what would happen. And it all worked out. I will put a picture of the amount of yarn that I had remaining here on the screen. It was minimal. I had less than 2 grams left of the Heirloom White and less than a gram left of the Cucumber Ice. So I would say it was definitely a success. Plus, it's wearable. It is not too short, it is not too small, it is just right. I will have pictures here on the screen because I did take pictures of me wearing it recently. It is very comfortable, easy to wear with shorts, and I haven't had a chance to test it out in like 85 humid weather yet, but I have worn it, I want to say it was like 80 degrees that day and it was fine, but yeah, I find this really comfortable. The hem, I used a US 7, and then the main fabric, I used a US 9. And neckband, I think I used a US 6, and my armholes I used also a US 6. And part of that is because even though my stitch gauge was only off by 1, my row gauge was significantly off. My row gauge was a lot, bigger? Well, I had less stitches to get to 4 inches, and so my number was way off. So the gauge in the pattern is 17 stitches by 27 rows, and mine was 16 stitches by 22 rows, which means in the shaping of the armhole and the neckline area, mine was stretching out, which was good because it was covering more ground and I didn't have as much yarn. However, I did have to make some adjustments to how the increases or decreases, I can't remember, decreases I think, were set up, just the repeats, so that I wouldn't have something that was so long and not wearable. And then I did go to US 6s for the ribbing to cinch it back in. In the pattern, it recommends US 6 or US 6 for the ribbing, US 8 for the main fabric, but of course use whichever yarns and needle combinations that are gonna get you the fabric you want, but then you have to make adjustments. And so yes, I made adjustments. It turned out really nicely and I just love it. The stripes I did to extend the length, and I really like how subtle they are. I did weigh my yarn before and after so that I knew how many grams I needed per round and how many rounds I could get out of how much yarn I had. So using that math, I knew I could get out 6 of these cream stripes, and with the remaining, I couldn't get another set of two round stripes in. So it worked out really well. So super happy with this one. I can see this definitely getting a lot of wear. Last finished project to share with you today are a pair of socks. I'm gonna see if I can hold it up here. Here we go. Oh, I love these summery socks. So a while ago, Denise of Earth Tones Girl had mentioned she was going to try a new type of cuff for short socks. And when she showed it on her YouTube channel, I thought, I have to give that a try. Sometimes when we wear short socks like ankle socks, the back can slide into the shoe. And though I've never really had that issue, I know if the socks are too short, the back of my heel ends up rubbing against the shoe. So with this one, you create this double thick, higher back to the short ankle socks, which then keeps it from sliding. Now, I have tried it on with my shoes, but I have not tried it on like all day walking around yet, so I can't quite vouch for it not sliding. But since my other shorter socks don't tend to slide, I can't imagine these ones sliding with that extra reassurance. So we shall see, but it seems like it should be extra comfy. The yarn I used is by Gwen of Bella Filato Studio. It is a one-of-a-kind colorway that was sold in these mystery grab bags, and I just love what she picked for me. I wanted something summery, and this is like a creamy yellower base with these neon green speckles and neon pink and some blue and orange, and it is just so much fun. The heel tab pattern I followed is by Forest Lane Fiber Co. It is a free pattern online, and it does recommend, I think, a different gauge, different needle sizes, and has the pattern for the entire sock. But I just followed the one part for the heel tab. So I still knit mine on US 1 or 2.25 millimeters. I cast on 60 stitches, and I did not do a provisional cast on. I just knit to the cast on edge. And I followed these heel tab instructions, which uses a German short row, and then you end up folding it in half and knitting to your cast on edge. And I think it is so delightful. Then I did 10 rounds in the leg. I did a shadow wrap short row heel. Denise has a great tutorial for that on YouTube. And then I did 70 rounds for the foot. And then for the toe, I switched to magic loop. So I do the rest of it on 9-inch circulars, and then I switched to magic loop, and I alternated decrease rounds with knit even until I had 18 on top, 18 on bottom, and then I decreased every round until I had 10 stitches on the top, 10 stitches on the bottom, and then I grafted it together. And I used a total of 62 grams for a pair of socks for myself. I wear a US 7 women's shoe, and these fit really well. So I'm looking forward to giving them a try in my tennis shoes and seeing how they go. But I just love how summery they look. The top part just peeks out of my shoe, the cuff section, and so I think they look really nice. Okay, we are on to the works in progress. You ready? I have a few different works in progress to talk to you about today, and the first one is a test I'm doing for Tori Yu. It is the City Top. And this pattern will be a top and a dress, so testers could choose which one they wanted to do, and I chose the top. Here it is. I won't talk too much about it since it is in testing, but you've got this higher neck, smaller straps, but not super tiny straps. And then there is this ribbing on the side detail. And it is knit top down. And so I am getting close to finishing the body. I am making mine a little bit longer because it is meant to have negative ease. The length shrinks up and because it has to stretch out. And so for me personally, I'm not going to wear something that is too short. And so I want it to be something that can just be tucked into shorts or jeans. And so I need to go a little bit longer. The yarn that I am using is Snurb Yarn and Fiber. The colorway is Very Berry. It is a 70% superwash merino, 20% silk, 10% cashmere 3-ply yarn that comes in 435 yards for 100 grams. And this yarn was gifted to me by Megan of Kimchi & Co. several years ago, and I am planning on using every last inch of it. I might have a little bit left over, otherwise it might be too long. I'm pretty happy with how it is turning out. It is just this beautiful pink leaning purple that is very vibrant, and I love jewel tones, and so I think this is gonna look really nice with black shorts, jeans, really anything. I feel like purples just, for me, go with anything, and so yeah, I'm really looking forward to finishing this, and I still have a decent amount of yarn left, so I can keep going several inches before I get to the hem and bind off. And I have already given it part of it, I've done a wet block on it when I was doing one part of it before starting the other part of it, just to make sure my gauge was still okay. And then after I joined it and knit several inches, I did a steam block so that I could try it on and make sure it was fitting okay. And then I'll probably do that again once I get near the end to make sure I have the right length that I want before I do the ribbing at the bottom and finishing it off. So this is due in the middle of July, and so I'm guessing you'll hear more about it sometime end of July, middle of July, somewhere in there. So I'm almost done with that. The next one I'm going to share with you is, I don't remember if I shared this last time. This is another mini mock neck tank. It is a pattern by Jessie Made Designs, and it is my fourth one? I don't really remember. This is knit top down. It is a fun construction because you are doing like the back and then the front, and I don't remember which one first. And then you pick up from the shoulders, and then you do this neckband afterwards. I like to do mine partially way through. I can't think of how I'm saying that. Because if I'm going to try it on, I need to make sure it cinches where it cinches and I get a better idea of the fit. And so I did do the ribbing. I did not do as high of a ribbing because I don't want it that close to my neck. It is close enough. It is just fitting over my head with glasses on. A little tight. I should probably take the glasses off, but we've already talked about that. And yeah, so I really like how it turned out. I think I did the neckband slightly different as far as needles go. Let me see if I can find my page on that. I am knitting the size S. Gauge is 24 stitches by 32 rounds. And my main needle is a US 4. Ribbing needle is a US 3. This yarn is super fun, isn't it? It just yells summer. So let me tell you about the yarn. I received the yarn in an exchange back in November. There was a gathering held by Emily of the Botanical Knitter, and we did a yarn swap. They were packaged, so you didn't know what you were getting. And yeah, this is super exciting. I cannot find where my yarn band is. Where did it go? That's odd. Oh, it's right next to me. This is yarn dyed by Republica Unicornia in Atlanta, Georgia. It is the Targhee sock that is 90% superwash, US Targhee wool, and 10% nylon. It comes in 115 grams, 465 yards. This colorway is Heart of Glass. And I just love it. The base of it is kind of like a light aqua blue, and then you've got like neon speckles throughout. It just yells summer. And there's lavender, neon yellow, light blue, pink, and I love how it's knitting up. Now I wasn't sure, because of some of the variegation, how it would go from knitting flat with half the stitches to knitting in the round with double that number of stitches, but so far it seems to be pretty even. I won't really be able to tell until I get farther into the body, but I feel like, I don't feel like there's any significant pooling of any of the colors yet anyway, and it seems to be doing okay. So I'm so excited about this one. This is just round and round stockinette now, and I feel like this is a good one to keep in my backpack for park trips with the kids, something that I can keep in the car that's just pick up and put down knitting that I don't have to count, don't have to switch out yarns, don't have to do anything special for, and it just makes it easy for on-the-go knitting. Next work in progress is another Tolsta tank. So once I finished that first one, it was so much fun. I had this great idea to make another one. I'm going to put a picture here on the screen of the yarns I pulled together. They're all by the Farmer's Daughter Fibers Sock Squad sock sets. And one of them is from, I think, last year or the year before. And then the other one is from June. I think this month is from this month. And so if you're unfamiliar with Sock Squad, what it is a monthly yarn subscription. It is a mystery. There is a calendar, and you see the illustration that the yarn colors are inspired by, but you don't actually know what it's going to be. They rotate through 3 different yarn bases. There's more information on their website. You can go to the Farmer's Daughter Fibers website if you want to learn more. But basically, I am holding the 2 main yarns together. They both have an orangey color to them. One has more speckles than the other, one is lighter than the other, but I feel like the variegation will blend in nicely with it marled together to look like a nice cohesive fabric. And because they are similar in color, you won't see a strong marl as if you held 2 contrasting colors together. And so here are my yarns wound. The lighter one is June's, and then the more speckly, vibrant one is whatever other month that it was. And I'm saving the mini skeins from these yarns to do a pair of socks. Ooh, I lost a stitch stopper. To do a pair of socks because I think those colors go really well together. Oh, I have them in here. I'm going to show them to you. There's like a beautiful plummy purple, a warm chestnut brown, and a moody dusty blue. I think these will stripe really nicely for a pair of socks. This is the Highwood sock base, which is an 80-20 superwash merino nylon. It comes in 400 yards for 100 grams. So I have 60 grams here, which will be great for a pair of shorter socks. Or I can also add in another contrast color. I feel like a dark green or a burgundy wine color would look really nice. And so if I have something in that color range that either comes in later this year or, I don't know, I like to keep the same base if I'm going to be doing striped socks or like a single project, so we'll see. But I feel like a maroon or a forest green would look really nice with this set. So here is the start of my next Tolsta tank. I do have it on the main needles now, so here we are. I have finished the body ribbing. I've got a glass mushroom progress keeper on it. The glass mushroom I bought at the arts and crafts store Michael's, and then I can't remember if this one came with findings on top or not. It's like charms in the charms section, and then I just add this round lover back to make it easy to use. But I really like how this fabric is knitting up. I am using the recommended needles this time, so US 6 or 4mm for the ribbing, US 8 5mm needles for the main fabric. I really like how the color is distributing. I really like how the speckles are showing up. It keeps wanting to curl on itself, so it makes it harder to show, but here we go. I do plan on doing the vest version again. I think this is going to be a fun one to layer in the fall, and I can either wear it underneath flannels, underneath denim shirts, underneath a denim jacket, or depending on what the fit is like, I might be able to wear a thin long sleeve shirt underneath it. I don't know yet. We'll see when I get there, but I'm excited for this project. The last project I want to share with you today are a pair of socks I just started. They are for my husband. I am working on knitting him 12 pairs of socks this year, which should double the number of hand knit socks he has in his dresser. And so I had picked up some yarn that is dyed by local Minnesota dyers that I shared in a previous episode. So this one is by the Palmer Yarn Company. This is their soft sock base, which is an 80/20 superwash merino nylon, 400 yards per 100 grams. It's a 2-ply yarn. This colorway is one of their oopsie skeins, meaning it was supposed to follow a certain colorway, but maybe it was in an experimental phase, or maybe there was a batch that just didn't come out the way they wanted it to. And so it's the puff colorway, but an oopsie one. So it was discounted, and I just loved it. I think it's slightly more saturated, maybe. I don't really remember. Here's the yarn caked up. I knit my socks 2 at a time. I always knit them 2 at a time, and these are on 9-inch circulars. I love this color. It is a beautiful turquoisey teal. There's shades of green in there, and it gets lighter and darker. It's a little bit variegated. I cannot wait to see how it knits up. I have just started. I cast it on so that I can just have it ready to go. And here they are. Oops. I like to knit my socks cuff down, so they have a knit to purl to rib just barely started on them. I cast on 64 stitches. These are US 1 2.25 millimeter needles. And then I have these lovely glass mushrooms on this one as well. One's blue, one's green. I feel like they match nicely with the yarn. So yeah, this is ready to go. Also a project I can keep in my backpack. It is good for road trips. It is good for errands when I'm not the one driving. It is good for doctor's appointments when you're waiting in the waiting room. It is just good for lots of things to just have ready to go. Okay, my friends, that is everything I wanted to share with you today. We are going to skip the Eats and Reads section, food for thought section, but I'm so glad that I was able to carve out a little bit of time to share with you today, and I am so grateful that you are spending some of your precious time to spend with me. I hope you are doing well. I would love to hear what it is that you are working on currently, or what is inspiring you lately. Maybe something fun that you have baked or cooked lately. With that, cheers to being creative. I hope you are doing well. I hope you are taking care of yourselves, your loved ones, and your neighbors, and I will talk to you next time. Take care.